Hey, everybody, this is your boy John. And as always, this is the Geeks from the Multiverse podcast. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about morality with gaming. And again, this is going to be a serious episode, but I'll tell you, it's going to be very informative. It's going to be very, well drawn when it comes to the information we give. But again, stay tuned.
What is up, everybody? What's going on, John?
I'm sorry, man. I was drinking some water, but it's good, man. It's great. This episode, I know Matt and I were talking about for a long time now, and I'll tell you, it's been something that needed to be talked about, especially with all the video games we've been talking about and all the, different things in geek culture that we've been, kind of mentioning before.
Yeah. So, John, I want to set a scene for you, okay?
All right, what's up?
We're in 2009, okay?
Oh boy, so this was like oh no, this was high school, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, we're playing Modern Warfare 2,
Okay, yep,
okay?
I remember that.
And we're on the level No Russian.
Wasn't it like the first campaign mission, technically, like when you first start the game, or was it like the second or something like
It
that?
definitely wasn't the first, but it was within the beginning part of the campaign.
Okay.
Yeah. And the scene is at the airport. So when you start the level, you're in an elevator where Makarov tells you, and there's two other people in the elevator. He says, "Remember, no Russian." And that kind of is how this scene starts. So you and the other gunmen that are in the elevator have American weaponry. So the guns you have are American guns. They're not Russian weapons.
Well, I think they're just, I mean, I hate saying it, but they're trying to blend in as best as they can during, the airport, in that sense.
Yeah. So as you walk with Makarov and the other gunman, he orders you basically to fire on every civilian that's in the airport.
Yeah, see, this is where, I'm going to tell you this, guys, if you don't want to listen to like this particular part, just go ahead and, fast forward or do whatever you got to do. But unfortunately, this is actually real life, kind of stuff that's going on. I mean, unfortunately, it's again in a video game, but
Yeah, this is,
keep in mind.
I mean, this is a real level in the game. And as you continue to walk through the airport, you continue to, shoot these, civilians that are actually like they're running, they're screaming, like it's a real scene in this game. And this one was notable, it's noticeably more graphic than any other level in the game.
Right, and I remember in Modern Warfare 2, I mean, a majority of it is, you're playing as Soap, Mac McTavish, basically he works with Captain Price in the game, but like, this is like that one random, campaign mission that, you get to basically be the bad guy in this. And, you're basically shooting, as Matt is describing, like these, innocent civilians. And, it's interesting that there is a part where if you do not shoot anybody, however, it may instead walk you through the airport as the massacre unfolds.
Yeah, so the scene will unfold as it normally does. So if you choose not to shoot anybody, it doesn't give you like a mission failure or anything. The mission goes, forward as it normally would. It's still very, very graphic though. I mean, like I said, you can hear civilians screaming and you can actually see like them crawling on the ground and the blood, it's really stupid graphic and crazy for 2009.
Well, right, and then like kind of like the next part right here is talking about like if the player doesn't want to go into like the explicit part of the game. My bad. The player can basically retaliate against the gunman and then basically kill them all, and then of course the mission fails. So it's like either way, you have to do something, and it sucks because it forces you to
go through the airport scene, because once you get through that part, then those agents that are walking with you, and then the rest of them that are kind of waiting for you at the end part of that level do end up turning on you, and you have to take them all out at the end of the level. And that's kind of where Makarov, reveals to you that he knew, who you were from the beginning, and his whole plan was to use this kind of tragedy in the airport to blame it on Americans so that, Russia and America could go to war, basically.
Right. And so with that being said, it this kind of describes unfortunately how not a real possibility, well maybe, like how 9/11 could have happened. I mean, granted they hijacked a plane and then of course they did what they did, but like this could have been a real thing. This could have easily gone the way it did. They hijacked the plane and then continued on with their mission. So part of this is when you're looking at it, it's hard to think about it like that. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people were, concerned and a lot of people were very, angered by this particular one scene in the game. But I'll have Matt, kind of explain the next part here.
Yeah, so I mean, some international versions of Modern Warfare 2 actually were subject to censorship. Um, Activision actually removed the level entirely from Russian versions of the game, which is no huge surprise.
No, not at all.
Um, it's a decision that was based on the country's lack of a formal rating system for games at the time. I don't know if they do now or if they, still don't, but at the time they completely removed that level. So, if you bought the game in Russia, this level never existed.
But I mean, but again, I mean, it's not like unfortunately, even back then that they couldn't bootleg the game itself, and they probably could have seen, the American version of the game and then actually play that level too. I mean, because I mean that's pretty typical, I would say, overseas to bootleg that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. So according to Activision, Russia does not have a formal ratings entity, and as a result, we chose to block the scene after seeking the advice of local counsel. That was from Activision, direct quote. And then some journalist reported Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 had been banned or recalled in Russia.
Well, see, I find that interesting because when you look at reporters, I mean, they're going to make up whatever as it is, but
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
the fact that they're like, oh well, yeah, it's banned completely. Like, no, that's not exactly what Activision
Probably
said.
wasn't exactly true. I mean, Activision came out and said that they removed the level. So, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I didn't own a Russian copy of the game. So,
And neither did I, man.
Japanese and German versions of the game, the level was so edited so that the player would be given a game over screen if they killed any civilians.
That's interesting
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I would have thought that would have never happened. But I mean, I get it. Japan, they're going to do their thing. But you said Germany too?
Yeah, it's in Japan or Japanese and German versions of the game. So if you shot a civilian in those versions of the game, you got a game over screen, mission failed, and you would have to start all over again. So basically, what they wanted you to do is just walk through the airport and not do anything.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, I'm just surprised that both of them were like, really adamant, but like no other country was like, you know what, let's just
Yeah.
whatever.
Hey, this is good.
Like
This is
yeah,
fine,
but America's version's fine, whatever. Like so, like the UK, you would have thought that maybe they would have been probably on board with this too, but they're like, no, we're just gonna keep it the same, no problem.
And then one other thing about the Japanese version, it was criticized by some players for changing Makarov's opening line, where he says, "Remember, no Russian." The Japanese versions of the game, he says, "Kill them, they are Russians."
That's wow. That's kind of, I mean, in some ways, that's pretty powerful. Like I don't even know how to describe
That's
it.
even more extreme than just say, "Remember, no Russian."
Right.
That's like just him telling him like, "Don't speak Russian." Whereas the other way around, the Japanese version framed it in all of these people that are at the airport now are Russians, and we need to take them out. So it's I mean, I can see where they players would criticize that because it's not the line that was in the game and not the way that the designers had written.
Right. Inside of that game. Yeah. No, like I said, when it came down to, the, I guess the overall decision on this, it's again, especially with Japan and Germany, I'm just a little surprised that, that they decided to go that route.
Yeah.
In that sense. But, when you look at morality with gaming, right? So you really have to understand the moral and ethical concerns of video games, right? And how it relates to society. But again, specifically, not exclusively,
Right.
to basically our kids, right? So I'm gonna mention like GTA. Okay, so like yeah,
GTA.
I'm because we brought it up before. So like with
Yeah.
GTA, like a 7 year old or probably younger than that, like should not be playing GTA because they're like, oh, that's cool. Let me just go, kill some cops. Basically have sex with a random, you know, unfortunately like stripper or prostitute or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not something that a 7 year old should really be subjected to at that time.
No,
But
and not at all. And I mean, even what we just talked about with this one, and most Call of Duties don't have a scene like this.
no, especially nowadays. I mean, because like you look at the new Modern Warfare 2, not even close. I mean, they redid the whole entire thing, and they
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
not do anything regarding that scene whatsoever.
But GTA and other games like that, yeah, like our youth and even some adults, like you see a scene like this, or you're playing GTA and it makes what you're doing in the game kind of normal, especially for somebody who's maybe at that 7 to 12 age range where they haven't yet experienced like what drugs really are,
Well,
or haven't experienced what sex really is, or what a relationship really is, or haven't experienced like what police officers are meant to do and what they're supposed to do, but they just become an annoyance in the game that every time you do something, the police are there,
right.
and then you just shoot them and you get rid of them, and that frames a part of your brain where you see a cop in real life and you're like, "Oh, what a pig." Like, look at that, and it's like,
Well, it's very impressionable. Like they're very
yeah.
impressionable at that age, and so when you look at these kids that are playing those kinds of games, it's like it becomes the new norm. It becomes like that's my reality, and that's like that's not the case because all of this is again, we'll say fantasy and reality because what you do in games like that's not the real thing. Like that shouldn't like you got to have a conversation with your kids in general because I do remember as a kid, my dad saying, "Hey, you know, sorry, when you're playing, GTA, this isn't a real thing. This is not like real life. I need you to understand this. Like killing cops, killing strippers, prostitutes, whatever. Like that's not a real thing. And if you think that is, then we have a serious conversation we need to have because, oop, sorry. At the end of the day, really, it comes down to parents really talking with their kids because if they don't, it's that's where you need to really
Yeah.
kind of establish this whole thing because you know with all the new games that are coming out, especially like Mortal Kombat, and some of these other ones that are very violent, very gory. I understand like okay, I'll say it, when we were kids, like there was like ratings were like non-existent. Like there was a reason why they were created because of course parents were getting upset. I mean, you look at school shootings and you look at all these other things that come into play. It's like when you look at unfortunately at Columbine, they blamed Doom as part of the ignition. For these kids basically to to go up and just shoot a random high school. But like that's it really comes down to all that like different things like that, and it's
Yeah, and
unfortunate.
it's really one of those things like, is doom really the main cause, or is it mental health? Like what is really the root cause? Like I don't know if video games really had that much of a play in those shootings. I mean, as tragic as they are, I don't know how much video games had a play in that. Um, what I can say is like, there are different bodies that do surveys, and the biggest one is ESA, which is the Entertainment Software Association, and they do an annual survey every single year. But the biggest problem that I have and a lot of people have is they post these numbers within their survey, and they don't mention how how they got to those numbers. They don't mention, a methodology. They don't mention any kind of way that they received these numbers,
But
you know.
it's like like the I can't remember what like the for like television, right? Like so they have like certain families that they know that they're being recorded to watch like certain programs and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, are they illegally obtaining, let's say gamers, so like if you have a PlayStation, Xbox, PC or something like that or whatever, are they illegally obtaining that information by knowing that okay, well, clearly I see that you're playing like let's say on a TV or whatever. Like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense on how they're tracking these numbers and how are they
Right.
creating this survey for people to be able to review and whatnot.
It just doesn't make the numbers legit. I mean, some of the numbers that I have kind of written down is, 76% of the respondents under 18 play video games. That's a pretty big number. But
Yeah.
how do they know that? How do they get to that number? How do they know it's 76 and not 82 or
Or
56?
or right, or something higher because, I mean, like
Like, how many people did they survey? 500, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000? Like, how many? Like, how did they get to know? And that's like, more of these numbers. 53% are male, 46 are female.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, that doesn't even add up to 100.
No, it doesn't. It's actually, I think. Well, anyways,
It's 1% off,
yeah.
but yeah.
75% at least play 4+ hours a week. 12.8 average hours are played per week, and 58% are on multiple platforms. But those numbers, like I said, those numbers, they're not like, how do you verify that they're correct? You can't.
Right, unless they're somehow obtaining this information from other sources. Like, that's the only way they're gonna be
You
able to
have
do
to
that.
you have to put a reference in there, and you have to say like, we obtained this by this method, by doing this, talking to that. They don't have that. It's just a thing they post on their website, and I'm assuming there is a methodology. I mean, you have to obtain these numbers unless you're just making it up.
I mean, it's like he said, she said kind of a deal. Because like, I don't know how you would unless, like you said, there's some form of, like, programming or formulated,
I mean, I can go on tomorrow and make the same type of survey myself.
Be like, yeah,
It doesn't mean
100% of
my numbers
players.
are going to be correct
Right, but you could be like, yeah, 100% of players are under the age of 18. You're like, well, how do you know? I don't know because I made it up.
because they're all under 18.
Yeah, you're like, wait, what?
At least 95% of the players on GTA are about 10.
That's true. But like, playing video games, it's true. Like it's a popular for every, I would say, age group. I mean, I would say if you're 65 and older and you're playing video games, you know what, you're probably that 1% or less that truly that's pretty impressive. Like, I mean, you've been around since pretty much the dawn of
I mean, it
video
depends
games.
on what kind of game I guess you're talking. Because I mean, are we talking more console and computer? Because I feel like that would be more for younger. But there are a lot of mobile games that I do see a lot of older people playing. So even people in their 70s and 80s, like they're playing a lot of like the
Like,
Candy Crush
That's
and like
exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah.
and those types of games. Which does it count as gaming? It does.
Or you mean like, slots or bingo? I'm kidding. Yeah,
It
it's a
count. I
joke.
mean,
It's
if it's a
true.
game, it does count. But video games is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it brings more money in than movie sales and DVD sales.
I mean, technically, the highest, if I'm not mistaken, the highest grossed game that ever existed was GTA 5. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it went over like 2 point something billion dollars by the time, I think, within the first year or something like that. I mean, it's still on.
It's still making money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of the GTA Online, but like it's crazy like that, like when you think of, like, for example, like Endgame, right? So like in movies wise, like it hit, what was it, like 2.5 billion or something like that, or like 2.8 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's the second grossest movie of all time. But the fact that a video game even made it past, let's say, $2 billion in sales, that's insane. Like that's unheard of. Like, especially with anything like that. So like the fact that a video game can literally surpass movies, a
Right.
lot of them,
Yeah.
that's mind boggling. That's where I'm like, when it comes to video games, it's crazy how much, money they create, and like all the graphics and everything else that goes into these designs. I mean, they spend, it could be like $500 million or more just for these video games from several years, but they get a lot more money back in return, and especially like, like if you think about the different versions of these games, so it's not just like America, UK, whatever. Like you're thinking Japan, especially Japan, or Germany, or like the wherever else, like where they're going to sell it. It's crazy that they're making that much money from it.
Yeah. I mean, we are obviously, most listeners, I think, are at least in the United States, but like
Yeah, I'm not going to mention any names, but yeah, go on.
you know, when we have a game that's selling here, like, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is coming out in like 2 weeks. Like, it's not just a US version. Like, they're making a Japanese, a German, you know, um,
Polish, or like a Poland, or yeah, Polish, or like, Australian, whatever. Like
yeah,
they make all different kinds.
they make all different ones because each version of this game has to have a different language, and they have to encode the game with that said language. So they have to make different versions. So a game sale in the United States is not going to be the same in, Japan or I'm sure they play in Korea,
Oh
but
yeah,
like,
depending. Yeah.
you know, all these other places like Russia and all these other places, like they're making all these sales. So I mean, it's probably like a 7 or 8 billion dollar industry.
Oh yeah, and then, I mean, like, even the next thing, like, video games have, becomes very sophisticated and realistic. I mean, it's true. I mean, you look back at the original, let's say, Super Mario and the 8-bit figure, right? And then you look at how, like, Modern Warfare now, or even like Mortal Kombat or something, like these really hyper realistic, games, and they're very gory and they're very whatever. It's insane with the amount of graphics that they have now, because, like, the fact that we have 4K and we have all these other things that almost, like, if you look at The Last of Us, I mean, it's crazy how, you're looking at their skin, the rain, like all this other stuff, and it's like,
And the hair, like the hairs move, like blowing in the wind. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. And you think of it like maybe 5 years ago, maybe even sooner than that. You look at some games and like you see the characters talking, but like the lips don't quite move
right, correctly.
quite correctly. Like the facial features like don't really move. But like games that are coming out now, like if you really look at like the clothes move with wind,
Right.
the eyeballs actually move inside their head. You can see the hair on their eyebrows. Like it's so insane.
Well, I mean, and especially with VR being so, I wouldn't say like relatively new, but like I would say in the last almost 10 years, roughly, give or take. I mean, I'm just kind of exaggerating, but like how you can go into a game, or like, let's say, for example, Resident Evil Biohazard, if you decided to do that on VR, I
I'm not
wouldn't
doing that.
suggest it. But the fact that you're literally almost feeling like you're there, and I mean, I've tried the Oculus, and I've tried like Google Earth, and I've pretended like I was on, Mount Everest, and I honestly, and it felt weird because literally, let's say a fan's blowing and I was standing on top of it, it almost felt like I was literally right there, and I actually had to take them off because I was like, "This, no, I don't like heights in general, but I would not be doing that even in real life." But it's crazy that the
Right.
graphics and everything have been so designed to literally, one, sink you in, but not even that, be able to almost feel like you're actually there in that moment, and it's kind of scary, especially now, because especially with the games that we've been talking about, it's, again, with kids now, they're more impressionable than ever.
Yeah, and it just plays into the morality, especially for youth. Like when you see something that looks like more realistic, it just makes it more, I guess, okay to do. Like it makes it kind of okay.
Right, and this kinda ties into the next piece too, is like, for example, like video games connecting to the internet, right? So before that, when Matt and I were,
Yeah.
playing a long time ago, right? You have to actually locally play, and we've mentioned this multiple
You
times,
had to bring a controller and like you had to actually play, or
with a buddy.
you had to actually connect two systems together
Yeah, to be able to do anything.
with two separate TVs to
Right.
actually play with somebody else.
If
Yeah.
you had 2 separate TVs and be able to do that, you're a rich kid. Like, that's plain and
Yeah,
simple.
yeah.
But, like, being able to play on the internet and, allowing children and just basically adolescents to play games, and then, again, have discussions with unknown adults and peers, like, it's true. I mean, because, like, reality is like, let's say if Matt and I were playing, which we've played before, let's say on Modern Warfare,
I mean, even Call of Duty. I
or
mean,
just
you
Call of Duty, right?
yeah.
And like all of a sudden you have this, like, 10-year-old kid yelling and screaming at you, and they're actually swearing at you.
Oh yeah, and let me tell you,
They're pretty raunchy.
there are some 10 to 12-year-olds out there that are playing games that know words that I don't think anybody else in this planet knows.
Well, not even that. I think the problem is like you're hearing them like cussing and swearing and all this stuff, and then you're like, wait a minute. If I was doing the same thing
A
at my
few of them
age,
called my mother some stuff, and it's like, you don't even know my mother. What the hell?
well, not,
Like,
not even
come
that.
on.
I like I said, like if I was to use the same language at their age, with if that was the same technology, my parents would probably slap the crap out of. Actually, no, I'm going to say it, they're going to slap the shit out of me. Like literally, they're going to be like, smack. Why are you saying that? But like the fact that I'm going to blame the parents, man. Like, because if they're not controlling what they're playing, or at least knowing what it is that they're actually doing, because I will admit, like, I was grateful that my dad had a conversation with me. He would get certain games, and we'd have conversations, and we would play together, so like he would know. But like, most parents wouldn't, sit with you and listen and actually watch what you're doing.
Yeah.
But like now it's like, oh yeah, sure, Johnny, here you go, here's whatever. And they're like, you like, let's say you pick up the game and you're like, wait a minute, it's rated M. This is what's going on. blah 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 blah. Like I'm gonna admit, like right now, like if my son, granted he's only like what, a month and a half, maybe two. Like if he grows up and he starts watching me play, I think the problem is that I'm gonna have to control what I do on, like, when he's old enough, if I'm playing a game, I'm gonna have to make sure that I'm not playing it around him because there's a lot of games that I know that both Matt and I play that I would not want him to be playing right now,
Right, right,
and
yeah.
so on and so forth. But like it's and I'm going to say, like we've already said, like it is the parent's job to make sure that they understand what it is that they're playing because even if like you're playing, let's say for example, like Fortnite, right? And I'm only using this as an example, but like it's cartoony, it's a animated whatever, but like yeah, you're killing people in the game, but like yeah, it looks like it's kid friendly, whatever. But like think about what the language they use. You just don't hear it because they're in their room, they're like in their own little world doing whatever. But
Yeah.
like you're not hearing them actually talking to, let's say, an adult or whatever, and you're like, wait a minute, you're 12 years old, and why are you swearing like basically like a sailor's mouth? Like, what are you doing right now? And where's your parents? Like, let's start with that. Like, are they out working? Like, what's going on here?
And a lot of people downplay this, and it's really, you shouldn't downplay this at all because, there are some games that do have some educational benefit, but most of the popular games that are coming out now, they do emphasize like a lot of negative themes, and they do promote, like the killing of animals or people. They're like,
Right.
hunting is one thing, but when you can go around and actually just shoot a dog or, random animals just because you feel like it, like Red Dead Redemption, that's a
Oh yeah,
perfect example.
that's a great example.
You can shoot a horse and it's like no big deal. I
Now,
mean,
granted, yeah.
you'll get a bounty, but like who cares?
So like even the next few, because I'm just gonna gather them all together. But like the abuse and use of drugs and alcohol, right, and like distribution of selling narcotics, criminal behavior, disrespect of the authority and the law, sexual exploitation and violence towards women, racial, sexual, gender stereotypes, and foul language and obscene gestures, right? So like all of these things in general, right? When you look at a
That
lot of video
that
games
whole thing
now,
is GTA.
it really is. No, I was gonna say GTA, but like there's a lot of different games that, it does promote it a lot more. And like unfortunately there is one game that I do like, but it's not because of all of that stuff. It's because it I like a lot of games that tell a story. And I think that's what it is. And then unfortunately a lot of games I would say now don't, sometimes they have great stories, but then sometimes
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
really don't have any story and you're like, what am I playing right now? But like so I played a little while ago. I played it now 3 times, but it was called Mafia 3. But granted, it was back in the 60s, right? So like the thing is that of course in you're playing as a African American guy, and yes, they use the N-word a lot. Like, and I mean a lot. And so like they use different things like that. They promote pretty much all of this, pretty much. And you know, I think now like I'm not looking at all of that as like, for me, like, oh, I need to do this because of all of this thing. I'm looking at it more for the story of what it's telling, not so much like, oh, okay, you know what? Yes, I can go kill or anybody. I could just go punch a random woman and that's okay. No, that's not okay. But like, if you're playing, like I said, if you're a 12-year-old kid and you're looking at all of that, killing dogs and animals, basically smacking, anybody on the street or whatever, because that's what you feel like, and then, using alcohol as whatever. Like that's not really what you
Right.
should be doing,
Yeah. And I mean I haven't played a lot of Fortnite, but the whole popularity of emotes within the games, like I know a lot of them are like dances and crazy stuff, but like some of the emotes, especially GTA, like they're just horrendous. I mean, they're funny for us because we're adults and we're,
We understand the
we're
joke.
at least mature enough to know like it's a joke and it's funny, but like as a 12 or 10-year-old kid, you see your character doing this and now you're walking around in real life like flipping people off, like doing the kind of, you know, jerking off motion with your hand, like
Right.
you're kind of doing those motions thinking you're being funny when you're actually just being inappropriate and kind of being a jerk.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, and that, I mean, that could be another conversation for a different day, but it's also like, knowing the right, there's a time and a place, right? There's a time and a place to do certain things. So like, even then when we mentioned like we're explicit now, right? So like, yes, I swear, he swears, but like, we understand like there is a time and a place, for certain things and that we don't need to be doing it all the time. But, like if you're hanging out with your buddies, right? now, and here's a prime example, and this is somewhat of a kind of a more common and serious issue at the same time. Is like if you're at your workplace, right, and you're with your buddy, right? So let's say, and unfortunately, right, a lot of guys, I would say the men in the audience, okay, you know this does happen, but basically you'll make a joke, and sometimes it can be towards females and so on and so forth. And we don't think anything of it. But let's say a female walks in and you say the same thing. Guess what? Harassment. There's going to be some form of whatever, and they're going to get you for it because the problem is that you need to filter as best. Well, I would say it hopefully all the time. But the problem is as men, we tend to do certain things that we don't think of, and then when that does happen, then you're like, well, what does that matter? I'm like, well, it does matter because it's supposed to be equality, right? I mean, it's the whole point of like, when for example, like in the military, right? So you have females that are now in like infantry roles, and guess what? I can tell you, infantry guys, they're bad, and especially when they don't care, their filters are gone. They're like, it's like the worst thing you'd ever see, but when it comes down to that, like that's where you need to understand because like if men or like let's say boys are growing up and realizing like, oh, I'm gonna, curse my mother out, like I'm gonna tell you something. Guess what? You're gonna have a reality check real quick, boy. But I'm gonna tell
Yeah.
you, like that's not the right answer. And that is why if you want to have respectable men, even women, it does not matter, you need to have conversations just like this, and especially as an early on age. I'm just throwing it out there because you are a reflection of them, and or vice versa. But the point is they pick up on things that you do all the time, and you may. And if you don't notice it, then you might want to start looking because I'm gonna tell you it's gonna bite you in the ass real quick.
Yeah, and I mean, us mentioning like a lot of this is, I want to say that as a whole, like parents are mostly, aware of what their kids are playing and they are in control. I want to say that.
I would love to say that too, but I know that's not happening.
I know that's not happening because I've been on GTA, I've been on Call of Duty, and I've heard the voices talking, in multiplayer, and I know that no adult has that high pitch of a
I mean,
voice.
if they do, then good luck to you.
Um,
I'm sorry.
yeah, in the United States at least, I can't talk about other countries, but our games are rated. Like you see the rating right on the cover. So for a lot of parents, like, and this is where, the ESA ratings say like 70 to 80% of the parents follow the ratings and limit games to their children. Is that reality? No, I don't think it is.
I could tell you that when I went to the store, if I went to GameStop or if I went to Blockbuster, or, yeah, I said that Blockbuster. Yes, for those who don't even know what that is, look it up. But anyways, when you go to these stores and you like, or you go to Walmart, you go to Target, you go to wherever, right, and you go buy a video game, I know a parent is not going to look at a video game because I'm gonna tell you because they're gonna be like, oh hey, look, I got this new video game, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, put it in the cart or whatever, and then they ring it up and they do whatever. Because I've seen moms literally just say, yeah, cool, and they're looking at their phones, they're doing whatever, and then they don't even realize like you just bought them the worst thing that you could have even imagined. And that they don't know, and then like later on in life, they're like, "Wow, why is he such a bad kid?" And you're like, I don't know. Maybe you should have looked at what he was
Yeah.
playing maybe when he was younger or
Why
like
is
things
he
like that.
swearing so much? Like, why is he making those weird movements with his hands?
Right,
Like,
because you're not
he's
noticing these
seeing like
things.
he's seeing these things in these games and he's trying to mimic like what he thinks is cool. And
Right.
that's where we're talking about morality and ethical gaming, and I don't know if, I don't know if that study is correct or not. Like I said before, I don't know if it's correct, but I can tell you it's not 70 or 80% of parents.
No, that's a lie.
Um, and one of the funny stories that I always, John and I kind of always,
Oh, yeah, I do remember this, yeah.
I tell John this story all the time and we kind of laugh about it, but you know, I was playing Dead Island just by myself, and I think this one was actually Riptide that I was playing.
Yeah, it could have been that. Or it could have been no, actually, I think it was the first one. I think it was just Dead Island. I don't think it was Riptide.
Either way, I was playing Dead Island, and if you don't know what Dead Island is, it's a zombie kind of game, and it's sort of like Borderlands, where when you're playing, like you're online, like people can just join you. I get you can shut it off, but Generally, people can just join you at any point in time, and that's what somebody did. They jumped into my game, and then all of a sudden, I heard this really high pitch voice ask me if I had any guns, and of course, like I'm like, what is this kid like 10 or 12? And he proceeds to drop this gun. It was just a pistol, and I go over and I pick it up. Now this is over a course of several days, John.
Oh yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
And I pick it up. This thing has about 9 million bullets in it.
Which is unheard of.
I mean, it's clearly a modded gun, but after he drops the pistol, he continues to ask me like, "Do you have a sniper rifle? Do you have an assault rifle? Do you?" And he just drops all these weapons. And here I am like, "Yeah, keep dropping them, kid.
That's fine with me.
I'm just picking them up. Like each one has about 9 million bullets in it." And it's like, I don't know this kid. Like the kid had to be 12 and he's playing Dead Island, which is probably one of the most goriest of zombie games that I've played.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I mean,
yeah.
when you're making, weapons like a baseball bat that has like a saw blade at the end and you're, literally like bashing a zombie's head and you see the blood come.
Or like I mean another example like The Walking Dead with like the barbed wire bat and like basically doing what Negan did in like
Yeah.
in that show. But like
I mean, there was foul language in the game. I mean, there wasn't really much like sexual stuff.
no, I don't
But
think
definitely like foul language and just the content being really just, excessively violent.
right. And like that these are the types of games that when we mention this, it's like it's this is the kind of stuff that you really need to start paying attention to, especially because now that unfortunately I'll say it, consoles at some point are gonna go away. And I feel like VR is gonna be the next really big thing where it's gonna go even more insane. And when you can play online with other people and do all this stuff, you're going to have so many things going on. I mean, you want to talk about the attention spans being like zero because they play for like 8,
Yeah.
10 hours a day. Like there's so many things that, with video games now being so, like we said, hyper realistic to another degree. I mean, when we were growing up, they weren't as, advanced, but like
No, they
now that
weren't.
they're, becoming to the point, like you almost feel like you're in the game itself. And like, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, it's kind of a little side topic, but there's an actual game in VR apparently that I've heard of. I've never, of course, never wanted to play it, but like
Uh-huh.
you can no, it's not bad. Well, I mean, it is bad, but it's not what you're thinking. But anyways, it's a game where you could literally join, and apparently, like if you actually die in the game, you apparently die in real life. I do not know.
And
Well, and I don't know exactly how true this is, but like if that's really the case, and
I
kids are seeing this,
I doubt it, but
well, I'm just saying though.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like if it does, like I mean, I hate saying it, but like let's say games
I
turn.
mean, you
into
say
that.
something like that immediately, kids are like, "Yeah, well, let's try it tonight."
Exactly, because they're
Yeah.
impressionable, and like that's the kind of stuff that if we're marketing games like this, yeah, kids are more going to be like, yeah, let's do it, sure, whatever. That's not real, or whatever, and that's the kind of stuff that you really need to start paying attention to because if the games start to do that, or like at least maybe not go in that direction, but like start to look at that,
Right.
then you really need to start paying attention.
Yeah, and like we said about GTA, like that game definitely has like exposure to drugs, like sex, nudity, definitely stuff, foul language. And what a lot of parents might not know is like, yeah, the game isn't just about, you doing missions and, stuff here or there. Like GTA 5 actually has a strip club inside.
Oh yeah, and you can
That
go right
city.
in, get a lap dance, have
And
sex with them,
it
in a
actually
car.
shows the women topless. Like you can actually see and potentially, try to touch in between the bouncer walking back and forth.
Well, yeah,
But, you have that, you have kind of that and then a big portion of their online, which, yeah, you can do more stuff now with like the heist and different missions, but a lot of their online is the, selling, manufacturing and distributing of, pretty much all the major narcotics that
like
you
cocaine, heroin, well, I don't really remember, but I think it was like cocaine and heroin was like a big one, like that you could do, and like you
and
could
the
be able to
weed,
sell.
your weed
Oh yeah,
factory.
weed, yeah.
You had your weed plant. Yeah. And you had to go in there daily to, resupply and do your deliveries. It's a real thing, people. Like,
Yeah.
You're talking to a 10-year-old kid who doesn't know anything about drugs is gonna go on GTA 5, probably, like, they're probably playing it right now, walking into a cocaine plant, resupplying it, and then going out and doing distribution missions. A 10-year-old kid.
Right. Now let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
Because now, God forbid that that actually does happen in real life. Like this kid was like, "Oh, I'm going to be gangsta. I'm going to go start doing that in real life." And you're like, "Wait a minute, no! Like that's not what you should be
Sure,
looking
and
at."
then they're looking at, like, "Wow, actually selling cocaine in this game made me so much money." You don't think maybe in their, kinda undeveloped 10-year-old brain, they're like, "I wonder how much real money we can get from selling coke or selling weed."
Which I'm not trying to say it's funny, but it's reality. It's the real
Yeah.
life thing. And so, another thing that we do want to bring up is, the studies have actually shown with children that if they're exposed to violent media, right, they may become numb to violence, imitate violence, or even show more aggressive behavior. Which, no kidding.
Yeah, no kidding, and it's kinda the same, like, I kinda use this as an example because I've always watched horror movies as a kid, and it's the whole idea of, like, desensitization, like, my parents have always watched horror movies like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, like, we've watched them growing up. So, today, I can pretty much watch any horror movie, and it's like watching a Marvel movie or watching any other movie, like, it's not scary to me.
Well, good for you, because that is the opposite for me, which we've already mentioned. But like, I get it though.
But
That's the problem.
that's the idea, like, you have a kid who's, like, maybe, 10 years old, and they get GTA, and they're allowed to play online. They're getting exposed to drugs, they're getting exposed to, like, sex and nudity, they're getting exposed to all this foul language, the emotes, all this different things that's in this game, and they're getting desensitized to it, so when they see it in the real world, it's not a big deal.
And that is hopefully what we're trying to get at, guys and gals and whomever else. But the biggest thing is when you're looking at these games, and then you start noticing that either your kid or yeah, basically your kids are basically imitating this, or they're getting more aggressive. They're showing you, they're flipping you off. They're doing other things, and they start noticing, oh, well, that's just the norm. That's the cool thing to do. I mean, I hate saying this, but I'm gonna say it is. I'll say young white males tend to think that they own everything, or especially like boys wise. Especially, I don't know what it is. I'm only saying like white because they tend to think that they're above the law, or they tend to be like that. I'm not saying that. I'm not just saying that every other race is not maybe thinking like this, but like unfortunately, you see it more with Caucasian young boys because they tend to think that they can. Oh yeah, let me call CDYF or something like that. Go ahead, whatever. And like, oh, my parents are hitting me. Like they think they know everything, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you get these games going, I only see that because like when they start showing these behaviors, you're sitting there like, well, you're a little brat, like at 10, 12 years old, because think about it like this, right? So like when you were well, okay, when we were kids, right? Video games did not cost as much as they do now.
No, they don't. They definitely didn't cost $70. I
Well,
mean,
no, I mean, but no, but not even that. I mean, think about like how much a console was or things like that back then, right? It wasn't even that much, but like to get a $70 game, to get a PS5, for example, that's $500. To get controllers, to get whatever else you need, you're looking at easily $700, $800 worth of crap, right?
right.
Guess what? You didn't have to pay that much to get a console, even though the graphics weren't great. But like, you're spending almost $1,000 roughly on something that like that's cool you're playing, but like that's a lot of money to be spending on, especially as a to get like a
Yeah,
10-year
yeah,
old a gift or like
yeah.
that. But like, when you start looking at the again the aggressive behaviors, it saddens me that when you start getting like those expensive gifts for those kids and whatnot, yeah, you might want to look at again the rating and make sure that if it's not M, okay, cool, that's fine, that's not a problem. you go into the M ratings, you really, really need to consider like, how is this going to affect my kid in the long run? And how is this going to be something that's going to be worth my time later on? Because do you want them to be outstanding citizens and actually know what, what the law is versus, what's right from wrong kind of a thing? Or do you want them to be, I mean, it's an old school term, but like, do you want them to be basically a hoodlum and a, a criminal or a gangster or whatever they want to feel like?
Right.
And make them believe that that's what they need to be because their friends are doing it. It's like, okay, well, if you want to jump off a bridge, would you do it? Like if your friend's doing it, would you do it? Yeah, like because that's the cool thing to do. And you're like, no, man, like that's not the right answer to give. Like that should never be like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what you should be doing.
The one funny thing that I've used this excuse many times. Not so much now, because sometimes when I'm playing a game, it is actually true. But I think for a lot of parents, like you have to understand, a lot of games you can pause and you can actually save.
Right. Yes.
But
Yes.
you will actually hear people, and I've been guilty of this.
Yep. I've been guilty of it too.
Of saying like, "Hey, you need to shut that off. Like we have stuff to do."
Oh, well,
I'm in a point in the game where I can't save. Like I have to keep playing,
yep.
and then you play for another 2 hours. It's like,
No, it's true. Yep.
and there are some games that you have to get to a certain point within the game because it's like your save, like Resident Evil. I think it was a typewriter.
Right. And
Like you had to get to that type,
well,
a typewriter to save the game.
right. And I mean, I understand you haven't played it, but like I'll say it in Pokemon, since I know you never played it. Like there
Pokemon.
Pokemon. Anyways, so like there's like certain games like that. Remember, like in like your old school Game Boys and stuff, like you had to go and physically find a spot to do it, like what Matt was saying. And so like back then it was hard to do that, or especially if you're playing Super Mario and like you can't really do anything. You better keep that on 24/7 because once you turn it off, you got to redo it the whole thing again. And so now, yes, there is no excuse. You can literally pause, boom, call it a day, and then
Right.
you can come right back to it like literally I don't know, the next day, and you'd be like, "Yep, all right, let's start playing again." Hell, you could turn off the actual system, and I guarantee it'll pop right back up again because that's what happens. So, like, even if you turn it off,
Yeah.
you can go right back to it, and there's no issue.
I mean,
So,
unless you're playing like Dark Souls or Elder
well,
Scrolls,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
you're kind of screwed. But
But I would say majority of games, for the most part, you can literally do a lot of different things, and I
most
guarantee
of the
you go
games,
back
if
to it.
there's not a place to save, like once you hit your pause, your pause button, kind of a side note, I guess, but once you hit like your pause button or your menu button, whatever it is in the game, and you go main menu, your game auto saves anyway.
Exactly, that's actually what I was going to bring up. Yeah,
So
'cause
your game would auto save, go back to the main menu, you can shut it off, and when you turn it back on,
you can go right
you
back to where we were.
you might be a few steps back, but you'll go back to right where you were.
Yeah,
And John, we did an addiction episode not too long ago.
well,
I
it
mean,
was a
it
little while
was a
ago.
little while ago, but you know, video games are one of those things on that list that is really highly addictive, and for children in general, like youth in general, um, it can be one of those things like they get really highly involved with.
Well, if you start to think about like why the DSM-5 finally put, video game addiction on there, like even beforehand, it was never a thing before the DSM-5. And DSM-5 came out, I think, was it 2013, so like 10 years ago roughly. And so when you look at that, right, it's pretty sad that so the diagnostic, what was it? I can't remember the exact term, but anyways, the DSM-5, like they had to physically put it in there, and for all that, so there's been 1 through 5, just so I'm clear. They didn't do it for the first 4, but they
Right.
did it for the 5th one because they started to notice that even when gamers were, let's say back in the 80s, back in the 90s, whatever, like they didn't notice that and they didn't start picking it up until literally roughly 13. It's pretty sad that it took them that long. So almost, I don't know, I wouldn't say like maybe like 30 years roughly to take that long to figure out like, hey, maybe we should, add that in
Yeah,
there.
this is a problem.
And so like now, like I said, with everything being so real and being so like involved in everything. So like, yeah, I'll admit, Matt and I are definitely guilty of this. This, we'll pick up a game and we'll be like, oh, you play for like a little bit and then you're like, wow, this is really good. And then you go really into it. And then like, I kid you not, my dad, I'm gonna throw him under the bus. I showed him one game. Kid you not, every day when he got home, he's played for like 8 hours easily every night, just playing the same game over and over and over and over and over again. And he's been doing it for a while now. But like he was so addicted to the fact that he was like, I gotta play this game when I come home. Like literally, I was like, so what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna jump on and play the game. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's an addictive behavior. Like if you feel the need to literally like go through your day and then all of a sudden you have to, I'm like, it's like getting that high. It's like you have to do it immediately when you get home. That's literally an addictive behavior.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously children and youth are more susceptible, I think, to, a lot of this addictive behavior with playing games and the amount of time they're playing. Obviously they may resist, the parents' attempts to limit the time. And some of the excessive video game playing could lead to less time socializing with friends and family, definitely poor social skills. And listen, playing online with people and chatting is not being so, I'm using the quote, air quotes here. That's not being social.
No, like actually, like for another example, like when you see kids now just texting back and forth, and let's say it's literally one sitting right here on the couch, the other one sitting on the opposite side.
Right.
That's not being social, my
No.
friend. That's literally just saying you're lazy and you don't want to have a direct
Yeah.
conversation with them.
Saying like, "Oh, I'm being social. I'm chatting with my friends." That's not being social. What we're talking about is like, get out of the house, go hang out with your friends. That's using social
I
skills.
mean, shit. When I was a kid, I remember going out literally. I know you remember this too. It was like going out in the street and like playing like kickball, going playing manhunt and doing all these like different activities. And then by the time the street lights came on, you knew exactly like I gotta go home, and that
Right.
was your
Yeah.
signal. But they don't do that now. A lot of times, it's more like, okay, I'm gonna go on my Xbox or PlayStation and I'm gonna play for like 5 hours, maybe have dinner, maybe bring it upstairs and then keep playing some more and then like wait
Yeah. Yeah.
until like midnight. And I'm like, so that's your productive social life that you have right now?
And it's not social. Time away from family, time away from family time, schoolwork or other hobbies, lower grades, less reading, less exercise, becoming overweight, decreased sleep and poor sleep quality, and aggressive thoughts and behaviors. I'm sure there's probably more to that list, but those are, a lot of the things that, excessive video gaming can lead to with youth. And adults are not, excluded from this.
Oh, absolutely not. Because I feel like there are some definitely impressionable adults that even in later life that think that they can be above, let's say, the law or
Yeah,
other
yeah.
things like that too. And, I was kind of reading back a little bit, but like, when you have kids, especially like, let's say they do like, for example, let's say you're doing like what we mentioned in GTA, right? Like you're selling, dope or whatever it is, right? And then they actually turn around and do it in real life, and then they say, "F the police and everything else." It's like, I'm gonna tell you something. You start going against authority figures, things like that. I'm gonna tell you, you're not gonna go very far because I'm gonna tell you, there's always gonna be somebody, whether it's a boss, whether it's you know the authorities, whether it's medical, whatever it may be, right? There's always gonna be somebody in your life that is going to be, unfortunately, your superior, right? And so, whether you like it or not, because this is the adult conversation that I'm going to bring up, is you need to realize that whether you like it or not, you can say, you know what, I'm gonna be my own boss one day. That's a great goal to have. You know what? That's a great thing you should be doing.
Yeah.
But you do have to realize that you will have bosses that will be above you, and there are things that you can and cannot do because we have rules for a reason. Whether you like them or not, it is what it is. Because if you do certain things, guess what? You might go to jail. And trust me, there's a lot of things that can bring you to jail, even the smallest little things that you've never heard of. Trust me, I'm not saying that I would know, but like, there's definitely things that I can understand that you shouldn't be doing. But
Yep.
reality is, you need to understand when you are playing these games that we've already been mentioning, you need to understand that, whatever is happening in the game is not real life, and that whatever you're doing in there clearly is not going to, help you in the long run. When you actually put yourself to, maybe getting a goal, whether it's maybe becoming a lawyer, maybe becoming an astronaut, an engineer, or, are working a blue collar job, whether you're a plumber, electrician, whatever it may be, like look at that and be like, you know what, this is a passion. Like this is what I want to do with my life. Like trust me, Matt and I love playing video games, and we love it. We enjoy it. We do everything about it. But like we do have a real life. We do have, jobs. We do have things.
What?
What? We have things because of weight. We understand that we can't play video games all the time because we have responsibilities, right? And I understand that, of course, if there are kids listening,
Oh, you said the R word.
what?
Responsibility.
Oh, Oh my
Oh,
God.
boy.
So like the reality is, kids, is that you know what? Be a kid. Enjoy your time, because I'm gonna tell you, once you turn 18, my friend, it's a whole nother
Yeah, and
ballgame.
I think, I mean, a big part of this, and we're gonna get into, how do we fix it, but um, adults can, I mean, they do face a lot of the same things. Decreased sleep, poor sleep quality, less exercise.
Right.
Um, but I think the biggest thing for adults is like going to work late, or losing jobs, or having a poor job performance, because maybe you work 8 to 5, and then you get home and you play video games until 3 in the morning, and then you go to bed, but you have to get up at 7, to go to work at 8.
We're not mentioning any people.
We're not mentioning anybody here, but like there are people that do this like 24/7 every single day, and they have a really poor job performance because they're not getting enough sleep. So they're tired when they're at work. They're not doing as much as they can, or they're playing so late, like that they are late for work all the time, which could lead to you actually losing your job. And if you've ever lost a job playing a video game, that's a sign you got a problem.
Well, here's an example, right? If you are obsessed with doing something over and over and over and over again, granted, that is pretty much the definition of insanity. But if you think about it, that's also very similar to addiction, because you're doing it, you're obsessing about it. That's the only thing you should be doing, and that's what your mind's
Yeah.
thinking. But like, if you have that problem, my friend, I'm gonna tell you, you might want to admit the first step, which is
Admitting you got a problem.
that's right, admitting you have the problem. But when you look at how we fix it, because now we're gonna.
Well, and I think, before we
Okay, fine,
before we get to
fine.
that number one, I do think, there could be six. And I think the first one is like you do have to set priorities, which
Oh,
could be under that set limit.
so you mean responsibilities?
Responsibilities, priorities, whatever you want to call them, John.
I'd say
But
both.
like, if you know that you work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, that has to be a priority in your life. So you have to know, like, maybe you play till midnight, maybe you play until 12:30, maybe you play until 11, so that you can go to bed at a decent time. I'm not saying you have to get 12 hours of sleep every night,
I mean, good for you if you can.
but if you're going to bed at 3:30 in the morning and you're only getting like 3.5 hours of sleep, that's not enough. And chugging 2 Red Bulls is not healthy for you in the long run. So you have
Nope.
to set priorities. Like for children and youth, school is what's important.
Right.
And if they're playing until 3 a.m., their brains are not going to be suitable for learning anything.
Right. And especially like, when I was just talking about like passions and goals in life and being able to do this, right? So if you're a kid, or, doing all that, I mean, of course, enjoy being a kid and enjoy, having those friends and, making those friendships, whatever. Um, the reality is like, once you're done with school, right? Unfortunately, whether you continue on
Yeah.
education, whether you do whatever, hopefully the goal is that you have something, you have a purpose. And I think that's really what, with like kind of like the responsibilities piece, is like you hopefully will have something that you are passionate about, doing every day. Because yeah, I mean, granted, I've seen people like, say I want to be a YouTuber, or, like a video game, content creator, or like whatever it may be. You can do that. I'm not saying that there are people that do it for a living, but you have to realize that they didn't just start out and they're like making millions of dollars one day.
Right. And they don't just make videos and post them. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
I mean, think about it like this, right? So even doing this podcast, we spent a lot of our own money And we already know, like, we're not looking at any investment in definitely in the near future, right? But we're doing this because one, we're passionate about like what we talk about, but it's not something that I mean, maybe one day if we ever get big and uprising, maybe we could quit our jobs and be able to do this full time. But like the reality is like you need to have something that you're going to be really
Right.
wanting to do, and like
You have
setting
to,
those.
yeah, you have to make those priorities, and you have to like look at what are my current responsibilities, because I have to make those first. Once you get those done, game, like,
Yeah, enjoy your time.
and enjoy your time. But like if you are in school and you haven't done your homework yet, you should not be on a video game.
I couldn't tell you how many times, even in college right now, how many times I told man, I'm like, sorry, man, I have too much homework. I can't even play with you. And,
Yeah.
and I had to do that because I needed to at least, educate myself, better myself. And now hopefully in December, I'll have my bachelor's degree. But like, if I said, you know what, screw it, I'm not going to do this. And then I just said, I'm going to play video games. I'm not helping. It's not only just affecting me, it's also affecting my family and everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
And it creates those hardships. And like at the end of the day, it's okay if like you say, "Hey, I used to play." I mean, Matt and I used to play quite a bit together all the time. Right now, I mean, I can tell you it's non-existent, but like it's only because that yeah, I have responsibilities at home, like again, taking care of a newborn, taking care of my wife, taking care of these things, and then like if I can, like squeeze in, if I could barely squeeze in 15 minutes, I mean that's something. But like, at the end of the day, I know my responsibilities are I need to take care of my family, and I need to basically make sure that that is my priority. And then if I have that time afterwards, if I can say, "Hey, let's play for an hour on Modern Warfare or whatever,"
Yeah.
then I'll do it, but like
And that's what's important, is like setting those limits. Like I know for me, like when I used to get home from work, that was kind of the first thing that I did. But I knew like I'll play for this long and that's it. Because I do have to cook dinner and I do have to do these things. And that's the priority. Like I know like when I can play and when I can't play. And if I just sat there right when I got home, which the job I was doing before, I got home at 1.
oh yeah, and so he would
So
play for
literally if
hours.
I just kept playing, I'd be playing until midnight, and that's a pretty long ass time playing games.
I mean, if you did that every single day, then yeah, that's about 11
But
hours worth of playing.
playing games for me is a whole different thing. Like, yeah, I mean, it may not on the outside look like it's, a stress relief or whatever, but that's what it is for me. So when I get home, especially being a counselor, in the addiction field, jumping on and playing a game, like it got me out of my own head. So if I played for an hour or 2 hours until, the wife gets home, then I can make dinner, and I'm not in that same place.
Right.
But you have to set those limits. Um, the second thing that we have is looking at the ratings on every game. So the ratings do matter. So if you're a parent and you're buying a game, especially like this time, because Christmas is coming,
Right.
look at the rating. If you are buying a game for your whoever the player is, whether it's a nephew or a friend or
Your
your
son, your
your son
daughter,
or daughter,
whatever.
whatever, l- if they can't handle the subject matter in the game, don't buy it. If you think the player that you're buying for is not mature enough for the game, don't buy it. If you don't truly know what the game is about, go to the clerk that's at the store or ask somebody who may know about the game and find out what the game is about before you buy it.
Right. And so like you don't have to be the subject matter expert, but like the reality is like especially with like we've been talking about with games being so realistic and everything else and what the story's telling you and everything about that game, and what it actually represents. That's the reason why you need to do that research because at the end of the day, you're not only going to be, you're thinking, oh, okay, this will be a cool gift to give, for my son, daughter, whatever. You know, it again, there's effects to this. It's not just,
Right.
this one time thing. I mean, it could be multiple games down the road, but knowing it before you do it,
And not every kid's the same.
well,
Yeah.
absolutely right. Because I mean, some kids, again, if you have, let's say, a kid that has ADHD, or let's say another kid that has depression, or whatever. I'm just making something up right now, but like there might be certain ones that you probably think, okay, maybe I shouldn't really do that, and maybe okay, this will be fine or something like that. But like at the end of the day, like we said, each kid is different. They're all individuals, but like you don't know really until you understand what it is that you're showing
Yeah, you just
them.
have to be okay with, if you're buying somebody GTA 5, you have to be okay with knowing that they're going to be playing a game where they're going to be walking into a strip club and they're going to be getting lap dances and taking strippers home or selling drugs, and the amount of foul language is just insane. You have to be okay with it, because if you bought it for them, you're saying that you're okay with it.
I mean, if you think about it, right? So if you think about um what was it, the front lobe or the frontal lobe for most, adults, right? So that usually does not actually fully develop, but was it until like the age of 25 technically, if you look
Yeah,
at it like
yeah.
that. So really what you're doing with this kid, whether it's boy, girl, whatever, you're really just you're basically, like we've already said, desensitizing them, numbing them from really what's going on. So by the time, let's say they're 25 roughly, you know, they have a whole new perception on what is norm and what is not normal,
Right,
in a sense. And so
right.
like that's where, when you start to look at the behaviors and how they, they act and how they, basically just are as a person, you can say, well, I probably shouldn't have bought GTA 5. I shouldn't have bought Modern Warfare 2. I shouldn't have bought Mortal Kombat. I shouldn't have bought all these other things. And maybe that would have been a different outcome later on if you didn't already do the research.
Right. All right. Number 3, John, find another hobby that's more active.
Well, you don't say. So, like,
Yeah.
again, so another example, I was just going to say this is like, one day for my son, like, Um, and I'll say this, right? So like if you give like kids like supplements or something like that at an early age, it does stunt their growth. It can do some kind of effects like that too. But I know it's kind of off topic, but like, kind of the same thing. If you give them just video games and they're only sitting inside all day, guess what? I guarantee you they're gonna gain some weight. They're not gonna be social, they're not gonna be anything, and they're gonna be a loner. They're gonna be basically a hobbit, like, inside of their room, and guess what? What do you think? You think your kid's gonna leave by the time they're, let's say, 18? No, they're gonna stay until they're like 30 because
Right.
you're
Yeah.
giving them that resource or that vice that they wanna have.
Yeah. So, I mean, go outside, hit the gym, go for a hike. And that's not just being funny. Like,
Oh, take a hike?
take a hike, but you need to do something that's physical, instead of just playing games. Like, I would say, unless like you are 100% a pro gamer and you make millions from playing video games, I could justify you playing video games. But I can guarantee no 10 or 12-year-old is a professional gamer.
Nope.
And I'm sure somewhere out there they're like, I'm a professional gamer. No, you're not.
No, you're not.
If you're making millions from playing video games, by all means, play video games all your life. I don't care. You're making millions. Go
And
for it.
and then you know what? Then you could also go hit the gym because, oh, wait, you'll have a professional, like, cook, you'll have, like, all these other things that can help you, but reality is
You need to
most
do something. Go out and do stuff.
right, most people aren't gonna have
Right.
professional cooks. They're not gonna have, like, personal fitness trainers. They're not gonna have all these things that are available to, oh, wait, the public, because most people actually
Yeah.
have to go to the gym, go get a personal trainer, go get these things, and if you have a professional chef in your house, like, I mean, that's just a bonus, but like I said, you gotta think of, like, how in the long run, how is this really going to affect you, physically, as also, like, mentally, emotionally, like, your health in general, right? So, at the end of the day, there's other things you could be doing with your life besides just playing video games.
You think if I made millions, I can just pay someone to play Call of Duty for me?
You probably could, man. I mean, I
You
feel
know?
like you know what? I think for your sake, because of how well you are in that game, especially Modern Warfare, I think you
Hey,
should.
I probably should.
Because then you'll be like, yeah, I'm serial killer 3118. That's right. And then you'll be like,
I'm getting 113 kills a match.
and then you're like,
Yeah.
and then you're like, all right, first of all, and then there's like some other random dude that's playing, and I'm like, Matt, that's not you. And I'm like, oh, it's a 12-year-old kid. I'm like, wait a minute, did you hire a 12-year-old kid for this? I'm like, did we just talk about this? But you know what? I'll bring up the next one. So,
Kind of a side thing, real quick. I was playing Shipment the other day, and I was kind of, because the new thing in Modern Warfare 2 is you can choose to stay with the group that you're with. So I kept clicking yes to that, staying with the group, because there was one guy, and I swear to God, we played like probably I played like 4 matches with the same group. He was getting 110, 113, and 108 kills in shipment.
Again, if you don't know, then you wouldn't understand, but that's insane. I mean, that in most Call of Duty games, I mean, if you get over, I would say if you get over
Hey, I'm lucky if I get
50.
like 28.
No, I'm just gonna say this, if you get over like 50, 60 kills, I mean, and if you start going above and beyond, like, yeah, you're pretty much a good
Oh,
player.
he was consecutively getting over 100. And I was like, this is crazy.
But
Anyway,
anyways,
number
so
4, John.
yeah, so number 4, invest in your relationships. So again, yes, as introverts, we must actually hang out with others, and online gaming doesn't actually count as hanging out,
What?
right? And so again,
You're a buzzkill, John.
I'm just saying, and then
Okay.
again, go hang out. Get out with your friends and family. Go on dates with your partner. Hell, if you're single, go to a bar and pick someone up. I mean, I must say that. I mean, that last one, I don't know if I trust, because depending on what bar you go to. But anyways, the point is
Some are
just
sketchy, yeah.
it's just like what we were talking about in the second one. Nope, sorry. No, actually, no, my bad. The last one we just talked about.
The third one.
Anyways,
Yeah.
the point is go out, go actually invest. Meaningful relationships, whether it's again like we just talked about, your friends, your family, your significant other if you have one, all these different things, because at the end of the day, I couldn't tell you, like, I mean, right now, I mean, it kind of sucks again having a newborn. Wouldn't suggest doing it if if you're not ready for that. I'm just kidding. um you know you really have to, and I know man knows this, like, you have to invest that time. You gotta go on dates. You gotta still have that love life and do all that, but like your friends and family, right? So like if you want to go, I'm not gonna say you go on a date with your mom. No, I'm kidding. Like go how have some fun with your family. So like if you go like to a movie, or you go apple picking. I mean, I don't know, that's just a New England thing, but like, or if you go out with your friends, right? So if like, hell, if you want to go to the haunt, you can see Matt at the haunt at one of the places. I'm not going to say where, but I'll say if you actually go to a haunt, you might randomly see Matt there. Who knows? But like, you could go do other things. So I know in like, good old New Hampshire, I mean, we have Canopy Lake, there's, I know in New England, there's Six Flags. There's so many other things. I mean,
Yeah,
granted, we're
yeah.
not like the most like popular place of like, let's go do other things, unfortunately. But you can find other things. I mean, hell, you could go again. You can go bowling. You can go to the arcades. There's so many other things that you can go hang out as a group.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
the biggest thing, like it says, invest in the relationships that you have, like not through gaming, but
yeah,
actually like investing in the relationships that you have. So you have friends, like call them, like go hang out with them, like
oh wait,
see them, like
are you saying what something you should do with me from time to time besides the podcast?
well, I'm introverted, John.
Yeah. Oh, don't use that as an excuse. Hey, we're talking about this. I'm just saying.
But
But
it's investing in those relationships and building upon those relationships, and not just like when you're gaming, like you're just isolating yourself, and that's not healthy. You need to get like I said, like we said before, being social just because you're in a game chat, that's not being social. That's you just chatting through a game.
right, and I mean, granted, when for example, like Matt and I, when we used to see each other at work, it was nice. We got to talk and we didn't have to actually play games together. We were working together too, but like, we would go home and then, yeah, of course, we pretty much I talked to Matt quite often, like during that time. But like, even now, I mean, granted, we unfortunately don't get to see each other as often because I do miss his face and his beard. So I'm just saying, like, there
The
are
beard
times.
is pretty epic though.
I mean, it is,
Yeah.
but being able to hang out with friends like him, like it's nice to be able to to talk and be able to socialize, because I'm not gonna lie, when you have a screaming baby, it's kind of hard, and I love them to death, but I'm just saying it's nice to have people,
Somebody who talks. Yeah.
yeah, somebody who
Yeah.
talks. But anyways, the last
So
one.
the last one is probably one of the more important ones because it's one of the ones that gets, I think, neglected a lot, which is sleep. John.
You mean like the 2 or 3 hours that people would probably be getting if they're playing video games?
Yeah, I mean, like number one, you do have to set a limit on how late you're playing. you have to have a bit of common sense, I'd say, John, which
I mean, that just depends on the person, my friend.
it does. But like we said before, like if you have to work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, like you have to be at work at 8 o'clock, which means you have to get up sometime before that to get to work, depending on how far your commute is, whatever. Like that's just you know a different scenario. You may have to get up at 6. You may have to get up at a different time. Um, but the the whole thing is like if you know that you have to go to work at 8 and your commute is 30 minutes, maybe getting up at 7 is not, you need to get up at 6:30. So if I play until 3 o'clock in the morning, then I'm getting less than 3 hours. So I need to know, like, I need at least like 7 to 8 hours to function normally.
Right. Now, granted, depending on the person, like myself, I'm not getting quite 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I
Like
mean,
normally,
some people can function on 6, but if you're getting less than 6 because you're gaming, I would say that that's a pretty big warning sign. Like you need to one know that you're going to have plenty of opportunities to play that whatever game that you're playing. Like this night is not the last night you're ever going to play a video game again. I mean, I could be wrong
you're
because
right.
anything can happen, but you're going to be able to return to the game the very next day once you get out of work.
You know, and you do make a great point, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, when we talk about the obsession of like playing a game every single night, like it's literally a routine. Guess what? The game's not going anywhere because I guarantee you, once you plug it back in, it's going to be right there where you just were in a minute
Yeah.
ago. And so, when you talk about sleep, when you talk about all this stuff, it's the reason, of course, why it's important. It's one of the main functions that we have to do. We recharge our body, we revitalize our body to get that energy we need so we can do things like, I don't know, go to work, maybe hit the gym or go do those other things that hopefully you should be doing. Right. But like at the same time, if you literally, I kid you not, I guarantee you, if you tried the whole 3 hour sleep thing for, let's say, a month, I guarantee you might literally go insane because I'm pretty sure there is a study that even when people didn't sleep at all and they did that for like a week or two, I'm pretty sure there's been a study that says you will literally start to go insane and literally you
Yeah.
start to go
Yeah.
unconscious and it's pretty scary because you can die from not sleeping. So again,
You can.
the whole point is you need to get sleep and you need to set that time and that limit and understand that there's a routine that you need to start because if you don't do it now, it's harder to break than when it's,
Yeah.
later on.
And chugging a couple Red Bulls or taking caffeine pills in order to stay awake throughout the day is not like the solution to, well, I can live on 3 hours of sleep. I have plenty of Red Bull and I got these caffeine pill. No. That will eventually catch up to you in a much much worse way.
I mean, I will admit the one if this ever could happen, I mean, if you could have like, Mr. Sandman, if like he came in here and like for some reason he touched you and like all that like exhaustion you had and like gave you like new energy, I'd be like, sign me up. But I know that's never gonna happen. But like, I'm just saying, like, if there was a way to be like, how tired I am, if you can just give me like 7 to 8 hours of like good rest, like already, and I'm like ready to go, and it's like, of course, midnight. Yeah, then you know what? Then we might have another conversation for a later date. But like, I'm just saying. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, right? It's important that you try to do all these things because if you start to build them or if you start to build habits now, it's going to be much better for you in the long run. And I mean, you look at the life expectancy now. I mean, we're looking at like 70s ish, right? Why wouldn't you want to try to extend it as far as you could, with hopefully a natural, life that you can get instead of having like, unfortunately, like car accidents or whatever the
Yeah,
case is.
yeah.
But like, try to extend your life because gaming is not the end all solution. It should never be
It's at the
the
end of
one
the
thing.
day, I mean, it's entertainment. It shouldn't be a lifestyle, which
Unfortunately, that's what it
there are
become.
there it is that's what it does become for a lot of people. And video gaming is not a lifestyle unless you're making money from it.
Right. And again, you're not a YouTuber, my friend. I'm going to tell you, because if you can make that happen, you know what? Good for you. That's a
Yeah.
goal that you should have.
If you're making money from it and it's enough for you not to work, great.
But reality,
You know,
not good.
game all you want, but in reality, for most normal people like John and myself,
Not going to
we
happen.
have to set those limits, and we have to, you know, we have to set those priorities of going to work and spending that time with our family and cooking dinner and doing certain things. Like for me right now, the only time that I can really actually game is once my wife goes to bed, and that's usually like after 9. But I can't game anymore until like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning because I have to get up at like 6:30, 6:40 just to go to work.
And again, I'm gonna tell you, Matt, that's great, because I have not played a video game since that kid has been born. But that's the thing. I mean, granted, it's different now, and I get it, and I have to deal with whatever. But you know, maybe one day, whenever I can, be able to turn on and be like, "Wow, this is great," and like actually play again, I can maybe relate to you on that. But unfortunately, I'm in the opposite boat. But like again, understanding the priorities, understanding all that stuff, is why gaming and morality is so important, especially,
Yeah.
the younger you understand it, the older you are, you're going to be like, wow, I'm glad I learned this lesson instead of learning it at a later date. Because if you start learning at, let's say, 25 or older, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have a long road ahead of you.
Yeah, you just gotta make good choices, and that's what we say that with the addiction thing, and with most of our episodes. Like you just gotta make good choices. I think
Make good choices.
with
Never
with
mind. That just reminds me of somebody, but
with morality, and ethical, decisions, and what you're doing with video games. Like you just have to make those good choices that you're not going to choose video games over your family or over your job or over school or over taking the dog outside or taking the trash out. Like those things are stupid and they suck.
yep, they do.
But if the dog doesn't go out, then the dog pees on the floor. If you don't take the trash out, then it overflows.
Then you become a hoarder, but
You're cleaning it up anyways. So you're going to end up spending that excess time cleaning up after the dog or cleaning, where you could have just done it and you could have saved that time. And then you have, the excess time after that to maybe game or do something. Like you just have to make those priorities and make good choices.
well said, man. But I think we should end this episode. Because I know if we go any longer, we're gonna be here all night.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say, guys, some interesting stuff. We got some new merch. Okay, so Christmas, of course, is coming around the corner.
It's creeping up, John.
It's creeping up. But I'll say this: so Matt has made some good designs. I'm going to give him the credit on this. I can't take it all because he's done an amazing job. But basically, we got a pin. We got what was it? Not a hoodie? No, it was a T-shirt, right?
There's a T-shirt. There's a pin. There's a stocking.
Yes, and an ornament. Yes. So
Yes.
all four of those things, again, if you look at should be under Etsy, but we make it through Printify, but that's not important. But like if you look at Etsy, you'll see it on there. If you guys want to be able to like get something for Christmas for those geeks out there, you should be able to go on there and order it, do whatever. Again, there's other things that we'll be talking about down the road regarding some interesting stuff. I'm not going to say a whole lot, but some different ideas. Hopefully that'll be more interesting. than
Yeah,
we've
and I mean,
already
there's
talked
another
about.
shirt. The Make America Geeky Again.
Oh yeah,
That
that's
was the one
right.
that you wanted. So
Hey,
I,
well,
I did make the design and make the shirt. So I wasn't thrilled upon the first idea of it, but once I put it together, I think it actually looks pretty cool.
so yeah, it's the whole like Donald Trump, kind of design, but not again, kind of making it our own in a a unique own way. But anyways, guys, we appreciate you. We love the fact that you guys are, hopefully tuning in, being able to follow and share and do all this fun stuff, because I'm telling you, it helps us in the long run. And hopefully one day we can actually donate money that isn't $2.50, to some
Yeah.
organizations. But anyways, as always,
Stay geeky.